Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Kenneth Henderson. First I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the alleged crime, then offer my analysis. In 2020, a man named Kenneth Ray Henderson was elected as the sheriff of Towns County, Georgia. He was sworn into office in January 2021. For 38 years, he had worked at Young Harris College. Much of that time, he was the chief of police, so he was no stranger to being in a leadership position. Towns County is in the northeast corner of Georgia on the border with North Carolina, about 100 miles north of Atlanta. The county is home to about 12,500 people. About 1,000 of these individuals live in the county seat of Hiawassee. Both the county and the town of Hiawassee have a low crime rate. It appears as though Kenneth developed a strange obsession with the Hiawassee Police Department. He didn't want them entering the jurisdiction of Towns County. In 2022, Kenneth interrupted a traffic stop that was conducted by a Hiawassee police officer just outside the city limits. The officer explained that the traffic stop was actually initiated within the city limits, but the driver pulled over outside the limits. Kenneth did not seem interested in the officer's excuses, saying, "Shut your blanking mouth." The officer responded, "You don't talk to me like that. I'm not your boy." Kenneth said, "I just did talk to you, blank boy. You a blank boy." Kenneth and the officer threatened to arrest each other before the officer left in his cruiser. During that same year, 2022, Kenneth became angry at his staff because they had lunch with Hiawassee police officers. He said, quote, "I'll run this mother blanker myself before I'll be disrespected by people that work for me and disrespect me like that. I've never been so blank mad in my blank life," unquote. I think Kenneth meant people who work for me. Kenneth also said, quote, "Let me ask you, are you gonna hang out all the time with my enemies? I don't want my people sitting with my blank enemies and being buddy-buddy with my blank enemies," unquote. One former employee said that Kenneth had a rule not to speak to the Hiawassee police. A resident of Towns County named Joshua came forward with a disturbing tale about Kenneth, which occurred in May 2022. He said that a black SUV tried to get in his lane, so he threw his arms up. The driver of the SUV, which turned out to be Kenneth Henderson, pulled him over with flashing lights. The vehicle was not marked, Kenneth was not wearing a uniform, and he never identified himself. Joshua said that Kenneth calmed down after seeing that he was being video recorded. Now moving to the timeline of the alleged crime. On December 13, 2024, not long after 2 a.m., a Towns County deputy named Austin Bradburn claimed that he had been shot during a traffic stop on Plottown Road in Young Harris, Georgia. This, of course, caused a significant police response to that scene. Body camera video from 4 police officers was obtained by an independent television station in Atlanta, Georgia, called Atlanta News First. Austin Bradburn could be seen on the pavement. He had been shot twice in the leg with his own service pistol. A Hiawassee police officer named Jose Carvajal responded to the scene to offer assistance, even though this was out of his jurisdiction. He applied a tourniquet to Austin and accidentally picked up Austin's firearm from the pavement. Realizing his mistake, Jose returned it to the holster, but then other emergency personnel told him to take the gun. Jose secured the weapon in his waistband. He said he would not touch the gun until the arrival of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, which is also known as the GBI. Sheriff Kenneth Henderson arrived on the scene and, not surprisingly, did not appear to be thrilled by the presence of a Hiawassee police officer. He confronted Jose about the handling of Austin's weapon, saying, "Have you got the gun?" Jose responded, "I do. It's right here." Kenneth expressed his anger at Jose for moving the gun, saying, "You should know better than that, buddy. Are you not trained?" Jose walked away and said, "Get away from me." At this point, the confrontation intensified. Jose said, "Don't touch me." Kenneth touched him anyway. Jose pushed Kenneth back, saying, "What are you doing?" Several Towns County deputies, who appeared to be shocked and confused, jumped in and held Kenneth to keep him away from Jose. They were saying things like, "We have a shot deputy, Sheriff. This is not the time or place. And we will deal with this on the back end." Kenneth did not calm down and continued to be aggressive, demanding that Jose put Austin's pistol back into the crime scene before the GBI arrived. Eventually, Kenneth proclaimed that he was placing Jose under arrest. Jose was handcuffed and put in a patrol vehicle where he sat for over 20 minutes until being released. No charges were filed against Jose. He was told that he had to leave before the GBI arrived, and he drove away in his police vehicle. Several deputies at the scene appeared to be frustrated with the behavior of the sheriff. One deputy said, "That's blanking ridiculous. That's the most blanking ridiculous blank blank I've ever blanking seen in my life." He noted that the sheriff put his hands on Jose first. Referring to Kenneth, the deputy then said, "He's more blanking concerned with the blanking city of Hiawassee than the blank shot deputy. This isn't the first, it isn't the second time, this isn't the third blanking time." An investigation was conducted into the shooting of Austin Bradburn. Here is the story that Austin supplied to the police. He had initiated a traffic stop on a silver Honda sedan that was missing a tag. The driver stopped, but immediately exited the Honda and walked toward him. The driver did not obey commands, so Austin tried to deploy a taser, but this tactic was unsuccessful. The two men fought over Austin's pistol, and Austin was shot in the leg twice with that weapon. The man drove away in the Honda. On January 21, 2025, Austin Bradburn was arrested. As it turns out, he had never encountered a mysterious and aggressive Honda driver. Rather, Austin had pointed his weapon at his own leg and fired twice, at least according to the police. Austin was charged with 1 count of violating oath of office, 4 counts of filing a false report of a crime, and 2 counts of making false statements. Austin Bradburn wasn't the only one in trouble for his actions on the night of the shooting. Investigators also had concerns about Kenneth Henderson's behavior. Again, he had ordered the arrest of Jose Carvajal, a Hiawassee City police officer. Kenneth did not appear to enjoy the attention he was getting on social media. He posted on Facebook indicating that the uproar on social media was filled with misinformation and statements not made under oath. He accused Jose of unlawfully interfering during an emergency response, contaminating the crime scene, tampering with evidence, and obstructing the investigation. Kenneth said that Jose was defiant, obstinate, and combative. In September 2025, the Georgia Sheriff's Association requested a formal review of the case. The governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, signed an executive order initiating a review. On October 21, 2025, the governor suspended Kenneth Henderson for 60 days. On October 27, Kenneth Henderson was indicted on 7 charges: 3 counts of violation of oath by public officer, false imprisonment under color of law, simple battery, and simple battery on a police officer. That same day, Kenneth drove to the Towns County Law Enforcement Center, which is marked by a sign bearing his name, and parked in a space reserved for the sheriff. It's a bit of an understatement to say he had an atypical experience for someone being booked on charges. Kenneth was released a few minutes later on his own recognizance. At the time I'm making this video, he is working his way through the criminal justice system. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Before the bizarre action Kenneth took against Jose in December 2024, he had already expressed a profound contempt for the Hiawassee Police Department. It was no secret among his staff. It appears as though everyone knew he hated them with a passion. It's not clear what his problem with the department was, but he must have believed they did something to him. Perhaps it was simply the jurisdictional issue, like he believed they were infringing on his territory, but his reaction was very intense for something that minor. He even referred to them as his enemies and didn't want his staff hanging out with them. As far as the incident where he confronted the Hiawassee police officer for making the traffic stop outside the city limits, I believe that Kenneth was on a mission to protect the motorists from what he believed was an illegitimate traffic stop, almost as if he didn't want one of the people in his jurisdiction being harassed by one of those Hiawassee city officers. Those officers were not worthy. They were not good enough. Item number 2, Kenneth Henderson had a long career before he was the sheriff of Towns County. It stands to reason that he must have been functional for at least a while. In the bizarre incidents since he's been the sheriff, Kenneth could be described as maniacal and deranged. He really seemed out of control during the incident where he had Jose arrested. This has led some people to wonder if Kenneth had been drinking or was otherwise under the influence of substances. But there is no mention of alcohol or any other substances in any of the media reports. I would imagine that if deputies would have smelled alcohol on his breath, they would have said something about it on body camera. They were certainly not hesitant about criticizing him. Now moving to item number 3. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Kenneth Henderson appears to have some type of anger problem and a bizarre fixation on the Hiawassee Police Department. He deserves to spend some time in jail for his offenses and should never serve as a law enforcement officer again. He's just not cut out for that line of work. On the night of the incident, the circumstances came together to form a perfect storm. Kenneth made his way to a serious crime scene, which involved one of his deputies being shot. Upon his arrival, he saw one of his enemies, a Hiawassee police officer named Jose. This probably would have been enough to set Kenneth off by itself, but it was actually much worse. Jose had become confused and taken the service weapon of a deputy who sustained gunshot wounds, the same weapon that was used to shoot the deputy. This, of course, would have been a key piece of evidence. This inexplicable blunder, combined with the obsession that Kenneth had with Hiawassee officers, propelled Kenneth into a rage. He lost control, berated Jose, and made physical contact with him. At one point during the confrontation, Jose offered to let the sheriff physically retrieve the gun from his belt. He was willing to give up the weapon. The problem was, this wasn't good enough for Kenneth. He wanted Jose to remove it himself and return the gun to the crime scene. Kenneth was not willing to back down one bit, even though he was captured on multiple body cameras, and his deputies were trying to calm him down. No one around him was being subtle. They clearly thought his behavior was disturbing. Kenneth was determined to save face in front of his deputies and to totally dominate and humiliate Jose. This is exactly what he did. He had Jose arrested. Kenneth must have known from the beginning that this was a mistake, but he couldn't help himself. His need to win outweighed his ability to reason. That night, he watched himself in slow motion as each impulsive and unwise decision chipped away at his future. Kenneth traded his career, his credibility, and maybe even his freedom for a moment of glory. He is a bully who could not stand to be challenged. The need to dominate is the very element that facilitated his undoing and cost him what he valued most, his power. Those are my thoughts in the case of Kenneth Henderson. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.